This episode is made possible by Partisan. This is Chris and welcome to another episode of Brand Origins. Today, we're talking about the brand origin story of Colgate. You see, Colgate is the brand with the biggest market share of toothpaste and toothbrushes in the world. But in the US, it's been an extremely tight race since another giant brand has been breathing down its neck, Crest, which is owned by Procter & Gamble. In 2006, Reuters reported that Colgate led in the US with a market share of 36% while Crest was at 35.7%. And it's been that close in the past few years. But get this, Crest was only launched in 1956. Colgate, on the other hand, was launched in 1806. And although they didn't start selling toothpaste until 1873, that's still an 82-year head start. Because when Crest was introduced, it was able to carve itself a 30% market share, thus becoming the market leader in the US for over 30 years. So how do you get an 82-year head start and still find yourself playing catch-up to a newcomer? We'll learn about this by first going back to how it all started. The year is 1804. William Colgate moves to New York City where he starts working as an apprentice to a soap boiler. And as he worked, he learned, watching closely how each step of the process unfolded. And he wasn't only making soap, he was also building relationships with dealers, suppliers, and customers, enriching his network. All throughout, he noticed how mismanaged the business was, and since he had a grasp of all the moving parts, he saw the true potential of what a business like this could actually become. And so in 1806, at 23 years old, he launched a small company in Dutch Street, New York City, focused on selling starch, soaps, and candles. In the early days, Colgate was selling soap in pre-measured bars, and as a way to market the product, Colgate offered to have the soap delivered to customers' homes, which was actually an ingenious marketing tactic then. In 1812, William Colgate would bring in his brother as a partner, and the company was then renamed into the William Colgate and Company. Right from the start, William Colgate was determined to use the company as an engine of integrity with a commitment to improving the lives of the community. Driven with this desire, demand skyrocketed and it started exceeding their production capacity, and so they had to move to a new factory in New Jersey. One of their best-selling products were the Windsor toilet soaps and the Pearl starch. William Colgate passed away in 1857, and his son Samuel Colgate took over. Under his leadership, Colgate and Company were relentless in developing so many products including perfumes, essences, and the perfume soap. The company's perfume soap line became very popular, and it's actually one of the first products that achieved global success for Colgate. It wasn't until the 1870s when Colgate finally explored anything remotely related to toothpaste, since it's during this period when there'd be a growing interest in personal care products. This set the stage for Colgate's introduction of tooth powders. In 1973, Colgate launched the Colgate Dental Cream, one of the first sold in jars. But then what really set Colgate apart was the Colgate Ribbon Dental Cream. Introduced in 1896, it was the first toothpaste packaged in collapsible tubes. And it came in the distinct, vibrant Colgate red that we will forever associate the brand with. By 1900, Colgate & Company was marketing more than 800 products. This included products such as toilet soaps, laundry soaps, perfumes, and other scented personal care products. The company turned 100 in 1906, and 2 years later, in 1908, it would finally transition from being family-owned into a public company. And the timing couldn't have been more perfect, as Colgate was finally beginning to export its products abroad. From 1914 to 1928, Colgate's global invasion began as it opened subsidiaries in Canada, the South Pacific, Asia, Europe, and South America. Now, we can't talk about Colgate without Palmolive, because even though Colgate already had a huge grasp of the market, the merger of Colgate-Palmolive turned it into a juggernaut. So all the while Colgate was growing, other companies were launching factories of their own. In 1864, the B.J. Johnson Soap Company opened factories in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And in 1872, the Peet Brothers opened their own in Kansas City, Kansas. These two companies would soon cross paths. In 1898, B.J. Johnson introduced a soap product that became incredibly successful, and it was called the Palmolive soap. The Palmolive soap became one of the best-selling soap in the world, up to the point that in 1916, B.J. Johnson changed its name to the Palmolive Company. And fun fact, Palmolive is called Palmolive because the soap consisted of palm oil and olive oil, hence Palmolive. And on the other end, the Peet brothers were making great strides in developing and selling laundry soap. The Palmolive company would eventually merge with the Peet brothers to form the Palmolive Peet Company. The Palmolive Peet Company had a presence in the Midwest and Western states, and Colgate comfortably reigned over the East. So in 1928, the companies decided to merge and strengthen their positions, thus forming the Colgate-Palmolive Peet Company. It wasn't until 1953 when they'd switch to their current name, Colgate-Palmolive. Colgate-Palmolive dominated the oral care industry in the US and for most of the world. But that's until this new player comes in and dethrones them. In the 1950s, Procter & Gamble started exploring ways to disrupt the toothpaste industry. P&G developed a prototype formula of toothpaste that included fluoride. You see, unlike today, fluoride wasn't a standard ingredient of toothpaste yet, and at that time, even Colgate didn't have it. So P&G started investing in clinical trials at the Indiana University, where 1,500 children and 400 adults participated. Around half of the trial participants showed a reduction in levels of tooth decay, thus attributing that the product was indeed effective. P&G grew confident, and so they launched a new brand of toothpaste, Crest. When Crest was rolled out nationally in 1956, it didn't really do much to Colgate's market share since it was only able to get at least 10% of the market. This wasn't bad, it's just a far cry from making a dent in Colgate's dominant lead. Here's the thing, toothpaste was normally marketed as something that was cosmetic, brands claiming that they were the best at whitening teeth. And so P&G was hopeful with Crest since the brand was positioned as the first therapeutic toothpaste. They tried to convince people that Crest not only whitened teeth, it also made teeth healthier and prevented tooth decay. But unfortunately, people weren't convinced and they stuck with Colgate. So P&G made a bolder move. In 1954, P&G approached the American Dental Association or the ADA to confirm the evidence they have from the clinical trials of Crest. Dentists are normally skeptical as to the claims made by toothpaste brands in advertising, but then P&G funded the studies to prove that Crest was indeed effective. 23 separate group studies were run to analyze the effectiveness of Crest, and each study would last around 2 years and cost around $10,000 to $20,000. Eventually, the ADA confirmed that enough evidence had been amassed. A formal submission was made to the Association's Council on Dental Therapeutics. And so in 1960, 8 years after its launch, Crest became the first brand of toothpaste to receive an endorsement from the American Dental Association. This endorsement proved that Crest was walking the talk, and that the claims were indeed genuine. This set the brand apart from its competitors and most importantly, Colgate. This breakthrough sparked the fall of Colgate's dominance in the US market because within 2 years, Crest's market share went from 10% to over 30%, and with this triggered a change in market leadership as well as a readjustment in the entire market. Crest had overtaken Colgate to become the #1 toothpaste brand in America, an embarrassing fall from grace. Crest would remain as the market leader up until the 1990s with a market share of around 35%, while Colgate stayed at around 20%. This was an incredible victory for Crest because it took away Colgate's first mover advantage. Sure, Colgate was the first to introduce toothpaste in collapsible tubes, but now Crest has become the first therapeutic toothpaste. It would take Colgate until 1969 to get their ADA endorsement. That's 9 years after Crest got theirs. And what's great about Crest was that they didn't stop innovating to improve their initial product. The initial endorsement by the ADA was a Category B endorsement, and as competitors started adding fluoride to their formulations, and while they all tried to get their own ADA endorsements, a new and improved version of Crest was already out and was able to get itself a Category A endorsement. Crest was simply thinking 2 steps ahead of everyone else. It took a while, but then Colgate struck back. Crest would enjoy its lead for over 30 years, until the 1990s when Colgate launched Total. In the late 1980s, Colgate started working on a toothpaste that contained triclosan, a gingivitis-fighting antimicrobial agent. This allowed users to fight bleeding gums and bad breath continuously with only 2 brushings a day. Colgate was eager to launch Total, but they were held up by the FDA since the package labels made claims that required further testing. This delay took almost 5 years. But then as soon as this was approved, Colgate launched Total in over 100 countries in 1992, along with a $100 million marketing campaign. The results? Well, Total was a massive success. In only a matter of months from the launch of Colgate Total, the brand leapfrogged Crest to finally retake market leadership in America. By 1998, Crest's market share slid from the high 30s down to 26%. This was a big blow to P&G. In fact, there were even magazine articles that featured smashed tubes of Crest. Crest would eventually launch its own triclosan-based toothpaste, but because of the FDA, which required Colgate to go through the same lengthy process, Crest's product launch was delayed, preventing Crest to launch a mounting response. Perhaps P&G's biggest move in recent years in an attempt to regain leadership from Colgate is its acquisition of Gillette razors, because this acquisition brought with it Oral-B, a big brand in the toothbrush space. But a year after this, Colgate-Palmolive responded by acquiring Tom's of Maine, a leading brand of toothpaste that only uses natural ingredients. This is Colgate's way of future-proofing itself. Because even though Colgate-Palmolive has brands in home care, personal care, and even pet nutrition, their oral care division with Colgate toothpaste and Colgate toothbrushes remains as the source of the lion's share of their revenues. Colgate-Palmolive has over 34,000 employees around the world and has a presence in almost every single country. The company will be 215 years old in 2021, but based on what we just learned, with Crest catching up despite Colgate's age advantage, it's not really indicative of future success. In the making of this episode, Colgate still leads the global market for toothpaste with a 40% share and toothbrushes with 32%. It's still one of the strongest brands in the world, and whether they slip up or remain on top, we're gonna have to wait and see. And so that's about it. Now you know about the brand origin story of Colgate. If you like this video, be sure to check out our other videos. They're about the origin stories of brands. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also listen to this episode on our podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about Brand Origins. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, so you could say hi to us there as well. This episode is made possible by Partisan. Visit partisanstudios.com.